Hey, guess what, everybody? Go listen to the Break It Down show.
So we have with us today at Bayview Studios. This is Bayview Studios, man. That's what I call my kitchen table when we have microphones on.
Very nice.
Yeah. You see the bay.
If Jay Moore can call his garage fake mustache studios,
Right.
we can call this Bayview.
Hell yeah. You can see actually that's the Carquinez strip.
It'd be better if you just completely got rid of that house right there. Just get rid of it.
I tried to get
Just
them to
mortar it, just
scoot it
level
over,
it.
and they didn't want to scoot it over. But it does impede my view slightly. However, the important thing is we have with us at Bayview Studios today Chris Guillory. Full disclosure, my friend. But we have him on today because he's an author, and we're going to talk about his new book. So you brought a copy of your new book with you.
I did. This
Look at that.
this is my gift to you for today.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's not signed or anything yet, but that could be changed upon my departure. So yeah, I just wanted to get you a copy in your hands, and maybe you'll give it a read.
The book is called A Soldier's Sympathy. It's by Chris Guillory. It's a military thriller and a technology thriller.
Yeah, it's it takes place in the near future where corporate rule is becoming dominant, and it's about a former Special Forces Marine who basically receives an order that he can't follow, and he goes rogue, and he goes against the corporation that hired him. Sort of what you said as far as the military thriller, but it's also got a sort of element of the Philip K. Dick cyberpunk, if you've ever seen like Blade Runner or read the book Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep.
Man.
So yeah,
This is your first novel.
it is. As John mentioned before, we go back a long way.
Yeah.
We worked together in San Francisco, and one day I was downstairs a few years ago, and an idea popped in my head, and I just said, let's see where this goes. So I started writing, and then about halfway, I'm like, I think this is going to be a book.
This is a thing.
I just went through the whole process, and then when I was done writing it, I just kind of took everything step by step. I didn't want to do too many things at once to avoid being overwhelmed. So my first goal was to finish writing it. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I started looking into, well, now I have a written book. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah, what the hell does one do with his written book?
Exactly. So then I just took it step by step. I, hired a great designer to design the cover. Then I looked into what my publication options were. And as you may know, self-publication today is becoming huge.
Sure.
Amazon has tools like CreateSpace, which is a child company of theirs, where they essentially offer a list of services, and you pick what you need, and then a few months later,
Everything from cover design and everything?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
They offer cover design, ebook upload, then editors will read through your manuscript and make sure everything
That
is
it's clean.
Yeah, and I was, you have this sort of sense that, hey, I'm a good writer. Yeah, I'm probably going to get the, full, the final edition back with one or two things. But when I opened up the Word file and I saw like the red, that was from the beginning of page 1
Yes,
all the way
indeed.
to the end of page 350. I'm like, wow, glad I went with the editing option.
They whooped a fit on it, huh?
They did. In fact, there was probably more red in there than the original black text that I typed it with.
Oh, come on. So, did you find it to be? You're complimenting the process. It was a worthwhile process.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, they have a good team there, and each time you're ready to go to the next step from design to editing, they do this handoff. They say, okay, this is where you're done. You could log in your dashboard and see your checklist, where you are, and then we're handing you off to this department. Here's who you contact for questions, and then whenever they have something for you, they'll let you know. But yeah, the process was long, but it was a lot of hand holding, and it was a great service all around.
Wow.
So you would do it again then?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
When they did the edits and they sent them back, did you accept all of it?
No,
Okay.
absolutely not. There, the one thing is there's not a lot of hands on with their team. They send you the edited manuscript, and you could agree with their edits, but there might be something that you wrote that you really wanted to get across to the reader.
You're attached to it.
That they were attached, or
Yeah.
maybe, I used some military jargon that they didn't
they
really
didn't get.
understand.
Right.
So they would make some changes, and I'm like, no, you would
That's
never
not
say
real.
this. Right.
Yeah.
You never call like a first sergeant a sergeant. That's just, something that
Right.
on the civilian side, you really wouldn't catch. But, being a former soldier, you're like, yeah, Try calling a first sergeant one day and see what happens to you exactly.
Yeah.
And you're
You live in the world where somebody might
I'll
get
tell you
punched.
what happens after he gets done kicking the crap out of you.
He pulls his foot out of your ass.
yeah, exactly.
Then he gathers the unit together and says, "I have to apologize in front of Private Guillory for getting a little animated with my corrective action." And he ends up apologizing because he'll lose his top. His top will lose his top is what will happen.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just it's almost every first sergeant that I've ever had. They're almost, I don't know if it's sociopathic or it's bipolar. Sometimes they're the coolest cat you'll ever see in your life.
Right.
And then you'll literally turn around and they're like Satan.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's an all first sergeant thing or just my experience with first sergeants.
I think that tends towards being the first sergeant. You know, a first sergeant once told me, he's like, every now and then, and he's telling me as my first sergeant, he's like, every now and then, I got to go bananas over anything. Just so you guys can know. And it checks you guys up without having to check you up personally. Everybody can do a little better. I may not see it. I may not hear it, but I know it's there. So I'll find, Private Turner, and I'll be like, what the, and then next thing you know, everybody's like, man, that guy went crazy. And then he apologizes to everybody and says, I got a little crazy, but you all have to see the crazy come out.
Yeah.
You got to know that they're capable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's you have a profound respect for a first sergeant, because when he's walking up to you, you don't know what it may be. It might be, hey, good job today, Guillory, or hey, I'm going to go, beat you with a broomstick for a few hours in the closet. So you're always up on your game. But anyway, I digress. So you get the edited manuscript and you could either approve or decline the changes, and then you send it back to the Create Space team, and they send the next file to you, which is the format, which is what you see literally inside the book. Once that's done, they send you a proof, your very own copy, and then you approve that, and then they upload it to the Kindle store. So when the book publishes, there's the option to buy the paperback or the ebook edition.
Wow. I mean, they've really done with Amazon in terms of being able to create that publishing platform.
Right.
They've done what the technology makes them capable of doing. They did it right. So one of the things that we revisit over and over again on our show with creative people is how creative processes have changed with technology. We have a lot of musicians on our show, as well as authors, and a lot of the things that we talk about are, the demise of the big box bookstores, or the demise of the recording process as it used to be,
Right.
or the record sales process as it used to be. The upside of all of that is that in the old process, a lot of voices that were fresh, new, groundbreaking got left behind.
That's right.
Sure.
Because they didn't fit into the big box model. And now that there is the ability to self-publish and do things like a podcast or your own book and to publish it yourself, you still have the tools, you still have the editing services, things like that polish up a piece of work if you do it right. But you have the ability to now, as a listener or consumer, you have access to voices you never would have had access to in the 60s or 70s or 80s. So now here we are with a Soldier Sympathy. When did you actually push the big button? Here it is at World. Now it's available.
December 31st.
December 31st.
Yeah. There's no real control over when it's going to hit the Amazon Marketplace. And it was there, admittedly, a few days before, but I wanted to do some sort of announcement. Yeah. So it kind of sat there on Amazon. What I was really waiting for was the ebook to also publish, because it takes about a week longer.
Oh, I see.
Once I saw both were available, then I sort of made the blast on my blog, Facebook page, personal website. Hey, it's here.
Sure.
Yeah.
How do you market the book now? I mean, you've written it. That's a gigantic hurdle. You've published it. My goodness, another gigantic hurdle. Now you have to publicize it. Obviously, you're doing the podcast with us, but what else do you do?
Yeah, what John just hit an important note on the fact that everyday Joes are now getting a shot at publication, recording, and a shot they wouldn't have 5-10 years ago. If you didn't know somebody in the street or you weren't an already made artist, then you were left behind. Subsequently, internet and free tools are a self-published author's dream. They're, Goodreads, Facebook, Twitter. You use the marketing things that you have available to you.
Right.
Goodreads has been a great tool. a year ago, I didn't even really know what it was, but somebody said, hey, it's a good way to keep track of the books you want to read and the books you've read. But I've also noticed that it's this powerful marketing tool. I hosted a book giveaway. So you simply go onto Goodreads and you click the book to enter the free giveaway. As of right now, it's been live for about 10 days. 400 or so people have entered the contest, and half as many has entered it to their Goodreads queue. That's 200 people I don't know.
Yeah.
200 people who have friends who follow them who now see it there.
Right.
Yeah.
So the direct answer to your question is just using the tools you have available that we didn't have 5 or 10 years ago, which is internet media, Facebook. As a father of 3 and a husband and a full-time worker, I don't have the money to blast out expensive
Go on a book tour.
Yeah, exactly. My jet's in the shop, as you know, so I can't fly everywhere I need to go.
Right.
So I have to do pretty much everything at little or no cost. So
Right.
just finding the free avenues that I can to market.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to correct you because you said the word average Joe, and we'll take that in the spirit that it was intended. But the fact is, to create a piece of work nowadays, whether it's whatever medium you do it in, it still weeds out the weak. So your humility allows you to call yourself an average Joe. But the fact is, this is a hustle, man. And for you to say, well, it's the average guy is able to publish. Yeah. I mean, that's a factual statement.
That capability exists for them to do it.
Right.
But,
But the average person's not going to do it. So, let us pat you on the back for a second and say, without having read a word of the book, that we know what the process looks like, and we know that the process does weed out the weak. The other thing that I know, and in the spirit of disclosure, sure, I really appreciate the copy of the book. I'm going to read it,
I hope you do.
but I'm going to read it because I worked with you for a number of years, and I know you're a writer.
And
I know you're a good writer,
I've
so-
mentioned it. And truth be told, I'm a little, I wouldn't say afraid of your read. I encourage that you do, but, you're
I'm going to be critical. of it.
you're critical.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I appreciate.
Well, we have to do that for each other. I mean,
Right.
that's how it works.
I released a few advanced copies, another marketing tool, to try to get some reviews out before the book published. And I reached out to a few people who I thought of as friends or acquaintances. And on the one hand, you want to hear great things about your piece. But on the other hand, you feel like you're not going to grow if they're not honest.
Yeah.
And a friend of an acquaintance of mine, great guy, he wrote his review and I was like, whoa.
Ouch.
No,
Did
not
it hurt?
ouch.
Okay.
It didn't. You know what? He said nothing but good things about the book.
Okay.
But he did go on to point out, and I don't think it's an ouch really, but he says it isn't perfect. And here's why.
Right.
And on the one hand, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you're like, wow. I really appreciate that feedback. It
Sure.
it helps out a lot.
Well, you go to the
And I
people
expect
you're
the same
close
from
to.
you,
You
of
go to the
course.
people you're close to because
Sure.
you know that they're not being critical for the sake of being critical. I mean, Pete and I talk shit to each other all the time.
Yeah.
But it's in the spirit of love. And when you have something that's an artistic endeavor, it is always a process. You got to go out and you have to get your ass handed to you.
And you have to have thick skin.
That's how it
Yeah.
works. And
Yeah.
and anybody that you admire in any medium who, has been through the creative process, all the guys you admire are guys who have had their ass handed to
Yeah.
them over and over and over again. And when you get them all in a room and you go, man, we really admire your work, the thing that they'll talk about over and over again. And, you can shoot this down or you can back me up depending on your opinion. But the way that we've seen so far, Pete and I have discussed this, all the guys you admire, when you get them in a room and you go, all right, tell us your stories. The stories that they tell each other are, man, this one time when I just went on stage, it was the worst show ever. I just got my ass handed to me. And years and years and years of that are what make a person a member of that vaulted club
Sure.
of people that we go, man, that guy's amazing. He's done so much. The having done so much comes from the willingness to go, here's my work. And if it gets its, butt kicked, whatever.
I would even say willingness is a good word, but a better word is the courage. You're exposing your intellect, you're exposing your passion. It's a lot of that out there.
Yeah. And you made me think of something, Pete. It's when I was writing The Soldier Sympathy, I was my only audience, right?
Right.
And I was writing things, and some hidden within the text are some things that I believe in, and some things that are close to my heart, intimate, so to speak. And now that I've published it, I kind of feel like that intimacy is everybody's reading it.
It's
does
everybody's
that make any
business.
sense?
Yeah.
It's like because I've never done anything from sort of an artist standpoint.
Yeah.
But now that I realize that this book is available pretty much to the world, it's almost like people are looking inside of me at the same time, and I didn't expect that at all. I was like, this is just something that I kept so close to my heart, and now everybody sees a piece of me, in a sense.
Good, bad, or ugly.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've had the pleasure of having plenty of people on our podcast who've told us that the ability to do that specifically and just be candid and go, yeah, man, that's me, and scars and flaws and whatever, is what brings you to the honest work. So I think if anything, we can see that as just the fact that you've, disclosed that, you took things that were really close to you and put them out there for the world. That makes me excited to read the book.
Well, I'm excited for you to read it. And you're one of those friends that I fully expect that don't just leave a 5-star review and say it was the most amazing thing you've ever seen on print. Because, of course, I'll value your truthfulness.
No, I'll be truthful. Absolutely.
But also don't leave me
but
one
I
star
will.
because I know where you
No, I will live. I'll say right now, when you see the review, it's going to have 5 stars next to it. And then it might have a disclosure like, okay, I gave him 5 stars because he's my homeboy. But
and he knows where I live.
Yeah, and he knows where I live. It's a soldier sympathy, not a punk ass's sympathy. So if he knows where I live, I want him to see 5 stars. However, the story was this and the story was that and the characters, whatever.
And Pete, you too, as a veteran, if you're into
I'll read
science fiction.
Yeah, I'll read it. Matter of fact, if and I'll say this, but if I do it or not, we'll see because everybody's short on time. Sure. I'll read it, and then I will put on my blog. I'll review it for you.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, man. We just had just before you as you walked in, we were just finishing our podcast with another author, Jerome Preisler, who has a few years on us creatively, and he, even with several New York Times best-selling books under his belt, says, I have a terrible time trying to get anybody to review my work.
It is.
So the process now is that much, there's that much more scrutiny, and there's that much with the openness and availability to publish.
Right.
You have a diminished opportunity to actually get a lot of the things that come along with being published. Like, hey man, review my book. Well, there's a zillion books out there now.
Sure.
Yeah, you don't need the guy with the big deep pockets to publish or to open a studio, because that guy is, for our purposes here, he's kind of obsolete, but that does create a den.
Yeah.
And boy, it is tough to get out of that den. But you've taken the first critical step. How many people in your life have you had the conversation? Oh, I'd love to write a book.
Everybody wants to write a book.
Really?
Every single person. Yes.
I would say, okay, maybe not everybody, but most of the people we associate with, just probably because, birds of a feather.
Yeah.
Will say, and I will say that I've not written a book. I would love to, by the end of my life, say, I wrote a few books, and these were pretty good, and maybe that one was a polish, but these other ones were okay.
Yeah.
But everyone wants to write the great American novel. However, few people actually ever put a pen to pad, and never mind actually finishing the book, but beginning the book and persevering through the process. One of the things, and I wonder what your comments are on this, but one of the things that we go through having a podcast that's still pretty much in its infancy.
Right.
And we're really happy for the success. So just for all our listeners there who are loyal, right on. You guys are cool. But
if you like the show,
and you do,
send us some pictures of your movies.
Don't do that. Support the show.
There are 3 ways you can support us.
Number 1, go to iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And leave a 5-star rating and review.
It helps with the show metrics, and it helps us get better placement. Number 2,
visit our website,
www.breakitdownshow.com.
We've got an Amazon and an eBay link.
Same Amazon, same eBay, you know and love, but they give us a little kickback when you get to their site from ours. And number 3, Leave comments about the shows that you like. We want to know what you think, how you feel.
Tell us how to make the show better. We greatly appreciate it.
Now back to the show.
We like boobies.
We ask our friends,
Mhm.
hey man, have you listened to the podcast? And Pete and I have several mutual friends. We'll say, hey, you know that it's not just me, but it's, you know, it's the two of us together. We have a podcast that we do. Have you listened to it? And our friends, typically, the response is, oh man, I'm about to, you know,
Yeah.
I'm a fin to listen to it, but I haven't yet.
Finna.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
But I haven't yet. And it, at first, in our first month, I would say, we would go, oh, you bastard. Come on, man. It's me and Pete. You haven't listened to our podcast?
Yeah.
Now we love to hear that because we're happy to say we have thousands of listeners. We don't have tens of thousands of listeners, but we do have thousands of listeners. And every time we see somebody like our Facebook page or like our whatever, or, you know, whatever it is, when we see, hey man, can you don't put your beer on top of my book? That's a prized possession right there. It's about to be signed by Chris Guillory. I'm going to have an artist sign, an author sign the book. Pete just put his beer down on my book. Damn, that's how Pete is, man.
Just right on the main character's face. Just
I'm a soldier. Like, hey, that's the place to put my beer.
yeah. Exactly. That's also it's you know, you find whatever works.
Yeah, I'm trying not to bang the bottle around, but that's fine.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
And
He's for the good of the show.
Mhm.
He's putting it in for the good of the
You
show.
know, and he's sort of helped because if somebody finds this book later and it looks all pristine and unused, they're gonna be like, well, nobody.
You didn't
touched
even
that
read
book.
it.
But when there's like beer
What kind of
stains,
crappy
and
book is
yeah,
this?
and like it's got gravy on
Yeah,
the
you
side
want
of it.
there to be
You're
some
like,
miles on
this
the
book's
book.
been places.
Uh-huh.
It's seen stuff.
You've got gravy?
I typically have a packet or two on me, but I was nervous and I forgot it.
So let's a packet. So back to my point, which
Yes,
I digressed from. Now, when we ask our friends, like we'll be walking through a grocery store or whatever, you know, buying man stuff.
And we'll see
like
Ray Trias.
bratwurst. We'll see Ray Trias. Hey, Ray, have you listened to the podcast? Oh, man, I was fun too. You know,
He knows. He's like, you guys are famous. But
right? He goes, hey, man, it's so happy. I'm happy to see you guys. You guys are famous. Have you listened
Have
to the show?
you?
Right.
Yeah.
But now we love it because, hey, we got thousands of listeners
So congratulations, by the way.
who are not our friends.
Yeah, no, that's in a way more of a compliment. Yeah,
Yeah, isn't it?
yeah,
So you see like friends and they're sharing it with their friends. And now like I've become friends on Facebook and somebody's hit me up and said, man, dude, I listened to your podcast episode with so-and-so and I dug it. And it was, I'll give you a practical example. We just recorded an episode with Kevin Robinson from Kevin Hates Hip Hop. That's an awesome podcast. You guys should listen to it. He got to us from our episode that we did with Mick Betancourt. And now Kevin and I we've traded texts practically every day since we released the Mick Betancourt episode, just because we like to talk smack to each other about, he is a hip hop PR person. So I talk to him about the guys that I like, and if I find somebody that I like that he doesn't necessarily like, then I can say, well, you don't know nothing about hip hop. No wonder you hate hip hop. You're not listening to the good stuff. And it's been a lot of fun making new friends and
Sure.
getting to know some people from those methods. So I think what's going to happen, and I hope what happens in thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands, is that people come across the book and love it for the book and then become fans of Chris Guillory. And then you can tell your friends, yeah, asshole, you haven't even read my book.
yeah. I won't say that, but you made me think of
I will.
something that John says you're an asshole.
You're
Who's
right.
John?
You can say that.
John.
Yeah.
Go listen to his podcast.
Right.
Y'all know who he is. But I think I was talking to a friend, you may know, Berkeley, and he said, what are your goals? And I said early on, a goal would be somebody who is not a friend, acquaintance, friend of a friend, just somebody who's found it along the way and said, man, that was a great
was a good book.
To me,
I
that
was
would be the
touched
most
by it.
fulfilling because I think you and I are kind of talking about different sides of the same coin or whatever the saying goes. It's, just to have one person who's not affiliated with you in any sort of way
Has
say,
no
"That was
obligation to
great."
say, I liked your work.
Exactly.
Really like your work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, and you're not allowed to dodge it. Right now, today, book's just out.
Yeah.
You'd be tickled if how many copies of your book are sold, where you're like, I can't even believe this number. What's that number out there?
I don't know. I don't know. Just say, let's say 1,000.
Okay.
If 1,000 of my books sold, I would be,
Floored.
yeah, enamored.
Right.
And that's either format. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm wrong to think this way, but sales are important, but not as important as feedback to me right now.
Sure.
Right now, I'm scanning Goodreads like
This is a great, great time in your career, I will say. I know it's a shitty time because we're all sitting around the table like, man, I'm trying to just get paid a little bit, getting paid would be okay.
Being paid is great.
Yeah.
But what I'm looking for is just, how it's getting out there. You could, like you say, I went through this process. I finished a manuscript. It was published, but it could be a great piece that never gets out there.
Right.
But my goal is, and what would really move me is just to see that it's catching on, that there are people reading it. There are people reviewing it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I'll say this. That is part of the process. And I'm going to do a little self-promotion here. I'm going to disclose now that Pete and I are working on a teleplay. And it's premature for me to say that because we don't know what's going to come of it. Probably nothing. Who knows? But I've been also listening to writers who I admire. One of those writers is Joe Carnahan. And he says, somebody asked him, it might have even been Mick Betancourt, asked him, what do you say when somebody says, hey, man, I wrote a screenplay.
Yeah.
Will you look at it? He says, no. Well, I don't want to see that shit. I don't care about that. I'm Joe Carnahan, goddammit. And he gets to say that because he's written tons and he's done a lot of stuff. But when we were all done laughing at that, he said, no, what I want to see is your 10th screenplay. I don't want to see the first one. Say, oh, hey, man, I wrote one. He doesn't care about that. What he cares about is the guy who says, and now this is my challenge to you because you've written a book and that's great and we applaud and I can't wait to read it. But what I want to read is your second book.
Okay.
And then your third book. And we're going to go down this journey together because by the time you get those started and finished and here's my second book, you bastard. By then maybe we'll be on our 200th podcast. And
what is this? What is this one?
This is number,
I don't know, 20 something.
27 probably.
Yeah.
Well,
27, 28.
Okay.
Whatever.
200, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I know that's, who knows? Maybe it's 200, maybe it's 400.
Yeah.
Whatever the
There you
number is, by then we will have gotten to the point where we can say, hey, man, that's your second book.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go, yeah, man. Boy, you guys are at it too. Whatever the number is.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's, like I said, that's my challenge to you. And I bring up that Pete and I are writing this thing together because who knows, maybe something nice will happen to it. And maybe somebody else will get a hold of it and say, well, it's good enough for me to take it over. You guys should probably step aside just because that's the way that world works.
Mm-hmm.
But, these journeys as we take them on, man, they're noble journeys. And we're in it for the journey. So I only bring this up because, dude, I'm here. I'm with you. And this is number one. And we'll get through number one and check it out and see it. And if it's great that you sold 1,000 of these, terrific. Then let's go work on the 2,000 and the 10,000 and the 100,000. Yeah.
Yeah. And you made a comment before about how, about average Joes and not everyone wrote a book. And I think maybe the reason why I don't feel the same way is because I was passionate about it, and that goes a long way.
Yeah.
As far as something that's not family or friends, something that's a project that you're passionate about, I mean, it doesn't seem like work a lot of the time.
Right.
So that's why I wouldn't say it was easy.
Yeah.
But I don't think back and say, oh man, remember that time I was up late all night? Because I dug it.
That's
It was
what you
fun.
wanted to do.
It's what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I don't know.
Let's talk about that for a second, though. So you're writing a book. This is your first book so you type in the first word Jaron is the first word in the book. And then after that, there's 350 pages that follow.
Yeah.
How do you get through? So this is where, being I'm just a regular Joe to I'm a guy that wrote a book.
Yeah.
What does that look like? How do you get from main character's first name to the end?
Well, first of all, a lot of stuff changes. I mean, of the prologue, probably a good half of it was rewritten, written, edited, and taken out, put someplace else. Something else was put back in its place. But, I don't know. I started it and I just kept going. And I was talking about this with somebody the other day, and I think they were kind of caught by surprise, where I really don't know where I'm going when I write. Some people will say they'll have this sort of plot summary that starts with the prologue and ends with the epilogue, meaning they know and all the stuff in between. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, I feel like I'm just as much the reader as I am the writer. Sure. I don't know where it's going. I just started going, and and then I'll kind of step back for a second and look in and say, well, how do I solve this problem? Yeah. Oh shit! I think I just created a major plot hole here. What do I do to fix it? Right. So I don't. There are a lot of times where I don't know where I'm going myself.
Well, that's a great journey, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
I surprised myself. I'm like, wow.
As a reader,
what a twist!
I'm excited about that, because I'm like, damn, you went down the same road that I was on.
Exactly.
And neither one of us knew where it was going to end.
Right.
And that's terrific, because there are great authors on both sides of that coin. I mean, there are the guys who plan and map the whole thing out and do the story as a whole conceptually and then they construct it in pieces like a blueprint of a house. And then there are guys who just grab a hammer and start hitting nails, and then figure out that it would be more interesting if they did this, and it would be far more fascinating if it went this way. And well, now that I've started down this road, I don't know where I'm going to go. So whatever the process is.
Yeah. But the cool thing as an artist, it goes wherever you want it to go. Right? Yeah. I mean, so that's part of what I dig.
It's like Bob Ross. You know how he would paint stuff? Who associates Chris Guillory with Bob Ross?
I think that's a pretty high compliment.
Yeah.
By the way.
But I mean, we've seen the show where he'd have the trees, and then
happy.
He'd get and we have happy trees, and then he'd get his little knife and he'd start making those little marks, and you go, oh, you just fucked it up.
That's what you think,
right? Yeah, and then he puts a shadow underneath, and he puts a little accent.
Just misdirection,
and you go, "Oh, that's awesome!
It's been there the whole time."
Just happened,
yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, I didn't know there was a bird there. I just put one there."
Same concept.
Yeah.
I just most of the time I sort of I sat down for about an hour yesterday, just sort of penning notes for the sequel. And when I wrote this one, I knew that I wanted a direct sequel.
He's working on book 2, y'all.
Yeah, do it.
But I didn't specifically set up anything in this book that'll go to a sequel. So now it's sort of an obstacle to say, okay, well, this is where we left off. What happens now? So the journey is once again, I'm just a reader myself, wondering where the story will go.
That's great. And I think J.K. Rowling writes the same way, and she's like,
Who?
The lady. The lady.
She writes about like
she's written a couple books.
She writes children's books. Children's books. It's no big deal. Yeah. So, but
wait, the one like Game of something, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't read them. I don't read that crap.
Nobody really knows.
No one reads her stuff, but she's this somewhat notable author. Anyhow, so yeah, she starts off the story. She doesn't know where it's going to go, and the characters really kind of come alive in her head, which is I love hearing that about you. Like, I'm not sure how John and I write together. That's a different thing altogether. And I think we're part blueprinty, part. Let's start with the blueprint here. And look, there's an addition. Oh, there's a swimming pool. We go off in a different direction.
Right.
But it's cool that you can allow the characters to develop and then surprise you with what they do. And that's
absolutely.
I love to read books by authors that do that kind of thing. I think it's just fascinating.
I do too. And I think that's one of the things that makes writing a solitary process, because you are on that journey. I mean, Pete and I are collaborating. And anytime you have a room of writers, and in our case, it takes a room to have Pete and my fat ass in the same writing on the same thing. You need a whole room.
Yeah.
And anytime you have that sort of collaborative process, you kind of have to roadmap it a little bit. So hopefully we surprise each other with some twists and turns. But for you, when you have the mindset that really, as a writer, you are really only 3 or 4 words ahead of yourself as a reader. Like, you just created that sentence and you're like, oh, I just read it back and it looks pretty good.
So some good things have come of that. But then again, some things, it's 1:00 in the morning, you're, on your 4th rum and coke, and you read it the next day and you're like,
Yeah, that was crap.
What's that?
When I like that. Delete.
Yeah, but that it goes both ways. Sometimes I'll read, when I finished a manuscript and did my first read, I'm like, wow, I wrote that. That's kind of cool. And then the opposite was like, yeah, it's got to go. It makes I don't even know what I was trying to say right there, to be honest.
Is there so I mean, like when we look forward to doing the podcast, the editing isn't nearly as much fun as the show itself. The show is the interaction. That's the
It's a creative part.
Yeah, that's the gravy.
Sure.
We love gravy.
You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
You have gravy?
Oh yeah, I got a gravy in my pocket. I'm gonna get myself a gravy pocket. It's gonna be great.
Packets.
Yeah,
You might be onto something there.
a pocket full of packets of gravy. But what? So I mean, I know what our process is to get ready, and I put John through hell. What should we talk about? Knowing full well we're not going to necessarily talk about those things at all, but I have to do that. That's part of my process.
Yeah.
So what's your process? Do you get in, put your cassette tape in, or play Enter Sandman, put your headphones on, and start rocking? What do you do?
People say cassette tape.
Yeah. I have my reel to reel.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple of things there. Number one, you just briefly met Aaron. But John knows him a little bit more.
Yep.
He's not exactly the kind of kid who'll just sit quietly on a couch and let dad brainstorm his next masterpiece. He's more of the, just to give you a little background on my son Aaron, on the way over here, he's playing some game and he goes, "Hey daddy, in my game, I just got a new cellmate and he wants to sleep in my bed. Should I?
What kind of games is this kid downloading?
He's like, should I beat him with a hammer?
He's like 9. How old is Aaron?
He's 9. He's like, yeah. So the cellmate is in my, and he wants to sleep in my bed.
I
He's like,
beat him with a hammer?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, and then
I'm sorry, I didn't think of this game.
And then 10 minutes later, he goes, "Hey, Daddy, I found this bar of chocolate on the shower floor. Should I eat it?" I'm like, "In prison?" He's like, "Yes." No.
He's playing a game where his character is in the joint.
And there's a bar of chocolate on the shower room floor. Should I eat it?
Negative.
Negatory, good buddy.
Oh.
Yes.
But anyway,
you don't let other dudes sleep in your bed, and you'll eat someone's chocolate off the shower floor.
Well, my answer to his question is absolutely yes. If there's because if you're shown as a punk and you let a dude sleep in your bed and you don't beat him with the hammer, then everybody's gonna know you're a punk.
You beat him with the
First
hammer.
you lose your bed,
Right.
and you lose your toilet paper, and then you pretty much lose all your packets of ketchup, and it's all downhill from there. No Pruno.
That's true.
The rest of your
Hands
time
off
sucks.
my packets of gravy, though.
Exactly. I know. You see, you put your foot down.
That's
you
where a
assert
brother
that's
draws
my
the line.
That's my gravy colored line.
Right. But yeah, so first of all, usually no kids. There, Aaron is occupied or Jack is asleep, typically late at night. Music.
Don't get the wrong idea, listeners. Aaron is a beautiful kid.
He's
He's a sensitive kid. He's a loving kid. He's all that stuff.
right, but don't take his bed.
But he ain't no punk.
Yeah.
He got a hammer.
Yeah, and he asked it so innocently. Should I beat him with a hammer? Yeah.
Yes, son. Yes.
Anyway, so that
This game, by the way, is called Hooskow. Download. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know what it is, and maybe that's something I should keep an eye on.
Maybe.
As far as
Just
you know.
maybe.
He's fine.
Yeah.
Please carry on.
So, no kids. Usually my wife will be reading a book and I'll just kind of sit there with my laptop and music with no words. So no Enter Sandman, nothing pretty much from Metallica Black. Unless it's an action scene, then maybe a little Enter Sandman.
Sometimes you want that to get your scene going.
Gotcha. But typically when I'm sort of penning something or just trying to think of ideas, for some reason I find words distracting. But yeah, so I just kind of like to find a place where I could have some quiet and either write or think of ideas. Or BART is another one. So if you're not used to public transportation, especially San Francisco, there's a few things you don't want to do. One of them is get caught looking somebody in the eye. So sometimes I'll just kind of put on some music, and when I have that good 45 minutes from my station to the Montgomery station, I'll think as I'm getting on the train, I have this dilemma that I've written myself into, or something that I need to figure out. I have until Montgomery station to figure it out. So then I'll just put on my music and try to think of how to solve that puzzle. Another thing is one crisis at a time is sort of what I've told myself with the writing and publication process. But when I'm creating the work, I think I start to get distracted when I have too many things that I haven't answered. So then I just try to focus one at a time and go, attack it that way.